Glory to Ukraine. I'm Oleg Christofa, and this is a story for adults. Like most episodes recorded during the war, this one was inspired by news from the front. In summer 2023, a Russian soldier defected to Ukraine after being shot by his own commander.
I fell and thought, at first I didn't realize he was shooting. Once I did, I ran.
But what's interesting is that this Russian claimed he wasn't Russian at all.
No, I don't consider myself Russian. I have my own nationality and traditions. When I was born, I lived in my native Alenevoch pasture.
What's more, the captive said his people had also fought Russians for centuries.
The Chukchi also had constant conflicts with Russians, even before we were part of Russia or the USSR. We fought them for about 300 years, I'd say.
300 years is a bold claim. Is it true? Who really won this war? And how did the Chukchi end up in Putin's army? Let's break it down. Subscribe to Adult History, where we'll debunk the Kremlin's two biggest myths. Myth number one.
Russia has never attacked anyone. It's remarkable that such a great and powerful nation has never been the aggressor. They've only ever defended their borders.
But seriously, what's going on right now?
We didn't attack Ukraine.
This isn't just a situational lie, it's a deliberate construction of an alternate reality where Moscow built the world's largest empire not by attacking others, but by defending itself from everyone.
Obviously, we didn't plan the Crimean events or what's happening now. Sadly, we were forced to use military means, but we didn't start this.
So Muscovy first crushed other power centers in northeast Russia, Ryazan, Vladimir, Tver, and Novgorod, then launched a total offensive in all directions, expanding with new lands and peoples. The Muscovite realm, with just 4 million people, grew into a 100 million strong empire in 3 centuries. Moscow portrays this as one long victory parade over the Horde, Sweden, and Poland, Turkey, France spawning a new myth.
Well, Russia always wins, never loses. It's been that way for centuries.
No, he's losing. From the 13th to 15th centuries, Muscovy started about 50 wars and lost over half. From 15th to 20th century, the Kremlin's stats improved. Out of 140 international conflicts, Muscovy only won 16. But these stats don't count small wars, like the Dagestan conflicts we mentioned. They don't count where Moscow's forces simply fled, or the many Buryat uprisings that repeatedly defeated the Kremlin.
If we back down, no one else will stand up for us.
Today we'll tell you about the most paradoxical of these small invasions, where Moscow also failed, the war with the Chukchi. It's paradoxical from the start. 4 million strong Muscovy, a hyper-centralized state with firearms and artillery, invading Siberia with private military companies like Yermak's or Semyon Dizhnev's groups, occasionally using regular troops, versus 10,000 Arctic Chukchi. The Chukchi remained in the Stone Age with a primitive communal system, no central authority, and only bows, spears, and leather armor. They first clashed in 1642. Moscow Cossacks under Ataman Ivan Erastov tried to impose a tax called yasak on the Siberian Yukakirs and encountered a Chukchi raiding party that came to neighbors for reindeer. When asked to submit to the Moscow Tsar, they responded with arrows and curses, driving the Muscovites away. The Muscovites responded to Ataman Semyon Dizhnev's expedition, called a Great Pioneer, yet in 1648 they defeated and expelled Muscovites from Chukotka. Dizhnev only founded Anadyr, the first fort in Chukotka, then explored rivers and seas, mapping straits. Over 50 years, 19 battles occurred, with Kremlin Cossacks losing heavily. 11 skirmishes began with Chukchi attacks on Moscow's expedition. 8 more times, natives fiercely besieged occupiers' forts. Some explanation is needed here. Out of Siberia's indigenous peoples, Chukchi are most extreme. They settled on the least habitable coast of the Arctic Ocean and the adjacent tundra. They survived by mastering the hunt for marine animals such as whales, walruses, and seals, and they also tamed the northern reindeer. They called themselves Luravet, meaning real people. Around them, those living in the more comfortable forest tundra, with trees taller than a person and without many months of polar nights, were not considered real people. These hardened survivors of the harsh conditions of Lora-Vitlana were sometimes attacked and had their reindeer and women taken away. The word Chukchi is a distorted version of the Lurovitland word Chauchu, meaning rich in deer, referring to the nomadic reindeer herders. There were also the Ankalin, or sea hunters. Everyday survival in extreme conditions fostered a contempt for death, both their own and others, as well as a belief in reincarnation. It is said that Lora-Vetlanum, their progenitor and the wise raven, granted each of them 5 lives, so they should not value it too highly. This was where the Muscovites met their match, because they had conquered other Siberian peoples through their cruelty and indifference to losses, both their own and others.
They just don't get it. For Russia, there's no such thing as unacceptable losses. It simply doesn't exist.
Muscovites fought, taking noble hostages by force or trickery, demanding, "Swear loyalty to Moscow and pay tax, or we'll send your children's heads in a sack." These hostages in Moscow were also called amanats in the horde style. But this didn't work with the Chukchi. Their hostages tried to end their own lives immediately, believing if unlucky now, they'd be lucky in the next life, making their families even fiercer. They slaughtered Muscovites and allied neighbors, especially Yukagirs and Koryaks. True Chukchi, like samurai, have no pity or goal, only a path. The Muscovites now see the Lora-Vetlana as almost equals due to their brutality. Their ancestor wasn't a wise raven, but a vicious dog. We'd add more, but science hasn't proven it yet. The Lura-Vitlans weren't subdued by cruelty, hostages, or leaders' deaths. Other clans' Toyons took their place. A Moscow agent, Vasily Spitsin, tried a trick. He invited 12 Toyons to talks and ruthlessly killed them all. In response, the natives refused talks with Muscovites and killed anyone they could: envoys, traders, hunters, and pioneers.
They're stirring up Russophobia. That's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're up to.
By 1720, in all of Siberia and the far north, only Chukotka remained unconquered equal in area to modern Germany. The empire's central authority took action against the natives. They sent the Anadyr Party, led by Cossack Colonel Afanasy Shishtikov and Dragoon Captain Dmitry Pavlutsky. They had 400 soldiers, artillery, and thousands of auxiliaries from conquered peoples, Yakuts, Tungus, and Koryaks, but the blitzkrieg failed again. First, the Koryaks, burdened by Yasak, rebelled. Shishtikov went to subdue them and encountered the Chukchi. The Muscovites were defeated, and Shishtikov himself died. His successor, now Major Pavlutsky, got more troops and new orders to attack the hostile Chukchi and eradicate them, relocating women and children to Yakut outposts. In other words, To finally resolve the Chukchi issue, Pavlutsky led 3 punitive expeditions deep into Chukotka. He burned Yarangas and killed indiscriminately, wiping out up to 10% of the peninsula's population. The Navy supported him from the sea. The packet boat St. Peter shelled Lauravitlan camps with cannons. This ship later joined Vitus Bering's expedition, reached America, and discovered Alaska. Pavlutsky entered Chukchi mythology as a cruel demon like his mother, used to scare disobedient children for a long time. Nomads had to abandon large battles for guerrilla tactics. In 1747, they ambushed Pavlutsky near Nadir prison. Allied natives fled the battlefield while the Muscovites and Major Chukchi were killed. They captured guns, iron sabers, armor, and 1 cannon in battle. Pavlutsky's defeat shocked St. Petersburg. New troops sent to Siberia made 7 more campaigns, but feared the tundra and achieved nothing. In 1755, new Anadyr Party commander Ivan Shmelev offered Chukchi a peace treaty on behalf of Catherine II, but got no response.
Well, I won't get upset.
Then he ordered unilaterally, we quote, "Don't provoke the natives or face military court." But even this didn't help. The Chukchi kept raiding, driving Muscovites to Ostrog and their subjects, Yukagirs and Koryaks, even further beyond Kolyma and Kamchatka. Finally, the next Anadyr fort commander, exiled Kurland noble Friedrich Plenisner, approached the issue differently, considering that the campaign cost a fortune, 1.3 million rubles, yet gained no land and barely 30,000 in tribute and furs. Lives lost weren't counted, but money, vast distances, and lack of roads proved decisive. The first Anadyr party took 2 years from St. Petersburg to Chukotka. Normal supply or control was impossible, exposing imperial weakness. The Senate, then Catherine II, ordered Anadyr fort destroyed, and Moscow Cossacks and settlers moved 600 kilometers west to Nizhnekolimsk and Gizhiginsk. This was carried out in 1771.
If we don't push back, they might. But if we do, they won't.
From the first clash between the Muscovites and the non-peaceful Chukchi to the liquidation of the Moscow outpost and the retreat of the empire, 129 years passed, which is how long the Russian-Chukchi War actually lasted. Recall that the much more famous Caucasian War lasted half as long, from 50 to 60 years where one counts, and ended with the victory of the empire. The Chukotka War is undeservedly forgotten, and those Moscow historians who remember it at all did not recognize defeat. And bring it to 1779, because then Catherine II issued a decree recognizing the Chukchi his subjects. And this is another Moscow hoax, because at that time the Empress was already mastering the overseas Alaska, but still failed to conquer the adjacent Chukotka. It was extremely important to take control of the peninsula until the British or French landed on these lands. So the Moscow envoy, baptized Chukchi Nikolai Dorkin, real name Tangitan seems to be, agreed with one of the Toyons that he would recognize Catherine's supremacy for great gifts, that he, in fact, he admitted it is unknown, and the others, then the Yons, did not care about it, because for them nothing changed, but the empire declared it a victory.
We're screwed, we're screwed, we're screwed.
A unique situation developed for these people. The world recognized Chukotka as Russian, but no imperial authority appeared there. Only border pillars with double-headed eagles were placed on the peninsula's capes. Initially wooden, they were quickly dismantled. In the tundra, nothing grows taller than dwarf pines, and wood is precious. So they had to build stone ones. Moscow emissaries gave gifts to local leaders and reported back. They claimed new subjects, but it was fiction. In the century, imperial law stated, Chukchi self-govern and follow their own laws. Their taxation was even more interesting. Quote, they pay yasak in quantity and quality as they wish, when they wish. A taxpayer's dream, right? You can give what you want when you want, only if you're in the mood. Indeed, this meant nobody paid anything to anyone. The church reported successful conversion of Chukchi to Orthodoxy, but this was also false. No churches appeared in Chukotka. Border Lalora veterans eagerly baptized multiple times for gifts, weapons, tools, tobacco, and jewelry. They continued following their ancestral faith. Instead, trade began. In 1788, the Chukchi Fair on the Anhui River was established.
And then they started buying all these furs and treating them with vodka.
Even in the late 19th century, Russian ethnographer Vladimir Bulgaris wrote that the Chukchi remained beyond any Russian influence. This influence only brought alcoholism and syphilis to the peninsula, which Laura Vitlan called a Russian disease. The real colonization of the peninsula occurred only under the Bolsheviks. In 1930, the Reds created the Chukotka Autonomous Okrug and began relocating locals from camps to towns. There they formed collective farm-like structures. Reindeer herding and hunting brigades were created and children were sent to boarding schools. This reduced mortality but spread Russification and disrupted traditional life and tribal ties. The Chukchi were unique in one more way. They're the only northern indigenous people to invent their own writing without external influence. It's associated with this man, Tnevel. He either invented or organized about 1,000 specific Chukchi hieroglyphs and taught them. We use our relatives. The Bolsheviks initially allowed the Chukchi to develop their writing and be called Luravitlans. But in 1937, they imposed the Cyrillic alphabet and continued calling the natives Chukchi. Something similar happened in 19th century United States. Cherokee Chief Sequoyah also developed a writing system for his people. The tallest tree on earth is now named after him. A statue of him stands in the U.S. Capitol, and his writing system is required learning for all Cherokee, with a Wikipedia article about it. Also in 1937, a Gulag division called Dalstroy was established here. Chukchi prisoners began mining tin, gold, and uranium in Kolyma. In the 60s, cities were developed to keep up with Alaska, but no roads or rails were built. So in the 90s, it all went to ruin. Today, Russia has up to 16,000 Luravitlans. Barely a third speak their language, and since the late USSR, they've been mocked as fools to forget the lost war's shame.
The Chukotka natives number 12,700, with 15,800 Chukchi total. Sadly, you're dying out, yet they've dragged you into war. Why does Russia treat everyone this way? Russia, I don't know.
We know if the USSR was a prison of peoples, today's Russia is their grave. In the last century, 13 ethnicities vanished there. Dozens more are near extinction. To hasten this, Putin made minority languages optional even in their own regions in 2018. This is yet another reason why the empire must be dismantled. Subscribe to History for Adults. Support us on Patreon and
glory to Ukrainian heroes.